Hello, everybody. Um, I'm going to do a really quick rundown of the matchups this week, the ones that were played, and I'm going to kind of look over everybody's teams and give you a feeling of how I feel your playoff chances are, as well as how you did this week in the game. So I'm going to first start with the Alicia and Anthony game, which is my game versus Alicia. There were lots of things said about this game on the Facebook chat, so not to rehash old arguments, but I don't think that anybody could score less if they tried. Literally, one player will usually manage to get more than 16 points. Alicia started two players on uninjured reserve. She had four players started on bye. John Ross from Cincinnati, her wide receiver, scored nothing. Uh, really, I think the only player that ended up getting more than 3 points, 4 points, was Chris Thompson, who got 9. Meanwhile, I got 112 points. Russell Wilson is looking pretty fantastic. He is now the number one scorer in fantasy. Feeling really good about my team now that I get Carlos Hyde back and I have no more players on bye. Um, my wide receivers could possibly be a little bit better, but I really do think that I've got a pretty good shot at ending up in the championships in this playoff. However, I won't end with myself. I'm going to just start with myself and go through the rest of the teams. The next game up on the docket is Joseph and Amy, which is a game that was won by Amy. Looks like there was also some bye week issues in this game. At least it was more of an even fight because both players appeared to start players on bye weeks or leave empty slots open. I think that Joseph could be somewhat pardoned for the fact that he had one quarterback that was injured and the other quarterback on bye. And never mind, no, Carson Wentz was on his bench. So, yeah, that just doesn't work. There's a reason why Joseph is 1-10 in the league right now. And on the other hand, Amy didn't really do herself much favor because she decided to start Frank Gore on bye instead of Tariq Cohen. So I'm just going to skip these two teams because they really didn't seem to put too much thought into the week. And I won't put too much thought into it either. Next up, the first competitive game, Zach versus Adam. Both teams started all of their players. Oh my god, that's awesome. Uh, Better than I can say for a quarter of the league. Zach's team gave a really good performance this week. Some of us thought that he might even break 200 this week. He didn't. 163 points to Adams' 103 points. Philip Rivers, I traded to Zach, and I think that that was a good move for Zach. He ended up starting Philip Rivers after losing Aaron Rodgers, and Philip Rivers put up 20 points. So I think it was a perfectly consistent move that worked out well for him. I traded Philip Rivers away for nothing. I had I wanted to get another wide receiver. I grabbed Aguilar from Zach, and he's done absolutely jack shit. But I didn't really need Philip Rivers. He was a backup quarterback, and I was never going to start him over Russell Wilson anyway. I think Zach's team, in my opinion, has the best running back core with Todd Gurley and LaShawn McCoy. I think that LaShawn McCoy is a bit underrated this year, if that's even possible. I know that he's something like rank 10 or rank 11, but I do think that he's going to have a better year as the year goes on. I do not have faith in Zach's receiving core. I do think that Zach makes it to the playoffs. I do think that he is a threat in the playoffs even. But Amari Cooper is so up and down, and I wouldn't trust Corey Davis under any circumstances to make a deep playoff run. On the other hand, Adam had a fairly decent game from some of his players. Stafford did well, Howard did well, Leonard Fournette is back, and I actually trust Crabtree a bit more than I trust Amari Cooper. Um, that being said, I don't quite think that Adams got a team that will go deep in the playoffs for similar reasons. The wide receiver core is also a little weak, and the running backs are kind of the bread and butter this year in terms of getting your good, consistent production from a solid set of running backs. Other teams that aren't doing so well, you'll notice a lot of them have very low performing running backs this year. I'm going to move on to the next game, which is Troy versus Taylor. Um, Taylor and I do not have a bet this year, just to be upfront about that. I'm still waiting for Taylor to deliver on his bet that we had last year, which is him praising me at a comedy club or an open mic night um, and writing a song about me. I never got that song, Taylor. I would like to at least get the song. Troy completely demolished Taylor. Drew Brees finally showed up. Le'Veon Bell and Alvin Kamara are a killer duo. He actually has a good wide receiver core. Doug Baldwin will get points always. I do think that Sanu will probably have an uptick in usage and points soon too. But he's always been solid. Wide receiver 2 always gets above 10 points for the most part. Not quite sold on Marquise Lee, but Marquise Lee has had some good games recently. So overall, I think that Troy probably has the third best team behind myself and Dixon this year, and possibly Zach. It'd be a mix in that little bunch. I do think that the Eagles defense looks really good right now, and their playoff schedule, um, besides the Rams, looks pretty good as well. So overall, I give Troy a pretty good chance of going deep in the playoffs. On the other hand, Creekbum just doesn't have the team. The wide receiver core, like I said before, is really poor. You'll notice that a bunch of these teams that are under 500 have very inconsistent running backs. And just, Robert Woods is out now. He's on injured reserve. Ezekiel Elliott, what can you say about that? Taylor did lose Zeke this year, so that's all I've got to say on that game. And then the very last game that I'm looking at is Terry versus Ben. And in this game, Terry ended up winning pretty convincingly. I do think that Terry's got a weak running back core between Tevin Coleman and Orleans Darkwa. Both of them have had good games recently, but I've chased good recent games before, and with inconsistent running backs like this, they can burn you pretty hard whenever they end up facing a stout run defense. In particular, Tevin Coleman in the playoffs has to play New Orleans and Carolina and us twice. He's going to be playing Minnesota. So Tevin's got a few hard run defenses to go up against. And Orleans Darkwa is going to end up playing Philly. And that's going to be tough because I don't think the Giants are going to be running the ball on Philly very often when they're playing from behind. So that's why I don't really give Terry as big of a shot to go deep into the playoffs. I do like the team, though. I mean, there's good names on the team. Dez and Michael Thomas are good. Flexing Rex Burkhead is just tough. That's never very fun to do. But I do see that he picked up Richard Matthews, who I dropped earlier in the year. And Richard looks like he's doing well right now. On the other hand, Ben, the team just isn't working. When you're starting Eli Manning as your starting quarterback, you know that you're going to have a problem. And that's really all I've got to say about Ben's team. He's got other players that scored well. He's running a 2 tight end, 1 tight end, and flex right now. Normally, I'd say that's dumb, but whenever it's Jimmy Graham and Zach Ertz, it works. It's like you're already running two. It's like you're running 2 wide receivers in the tight end position. Looking at the standings right now, I Before this week, I was going to say that I think Dixon's going to win it all. I'm not as sold on Dixon's team as I was before this week started. I'm not sold on Dak Prescott. Kareem Hunt has been underutilized. McKinnon may be regressing a little bit. He's got one of the best wide receiver cores. Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, and Mike Evans are all killer. It'll remain to be seen if that's what it looks like at the end of the year. Mike Evans is facing some troubles with Tampa Bay Bucks right now. Um, and DeAndre Hopkins has a pretty crappy quarterback throwing to him, although he gets every throw every look that goes his way because he's DeAndre Hopkins. Julio Jones is a little bit underperforming this year, but as the stretch comes, I do think that Julio's going to do well. I think that right now, I gotta say, I really do feel like I've got a hold on the favorite to win the championship this year. I think after me, it's probably going to be a mix between either Dixon or Zach. Um, Zach just needs to make sure that he wins a few games to actually get there. Troy, I think, has a pretty good shot with Le'Veon Bell and Alvin Kamara as well. But for Zach and Troy, I think that a little bit of help at wide receiver may go a long way. Other than that, I think that's really all I've got to talk about. So thank you for listening, and may all of you have best of luck at the end of the season and into the playoffs.